Hmm.
Morning.
Morning.
Hi, Jordan. I'm just sending out the notice for the through MailChimp here. So,
Cool. I'll be right back.
yeah, okay. And for those of you on YouTube, um, we are here. Um, and we'll let we'll let the group gather for a few moments. I'm just sending out my reminder on on MailChimp, so I need a minute. Uh, and so that will be done shortly. Um, and sorry to be a little late getting started this morning. It's been a little breathless, and so we are on YouTube, Jordan, but I am in the process of mailing out the reminders here to everyone. Where all the group members? Geez, in the time between these sessions, I forget how to do this. Oh my God. Don't get old, man. It is not for the weak of heart. We will be with you momentarily. You may say hello on let's see, on YouTube. Let's see. Is that YouTube? No, that's not YouTube. This is YouTube. Um, I'll wish everyone a good what morning. And we're going to start momentarily. I'm just getting a reminder out on MailChimp, and that's going to take me a few more moments. Um, and holy smokes. Well, they've done it again. Uh, they have changed things around on me, so I have to search a little bit for the activities that I want.
That seemed to happen on everything this week. I'm getting like multiple confirmations and then confirm the confirmation. And
Oh, yeah. Okay, here it is. Right now I'm cooking. Okay. Subject. Okay. Getting there. I on the Wednesday group, I've been sending out notices, um, but um, I just as I'm coming into this, I'm realizing that oh my God, I failed to send last week. I thought I had sent it. I mean, I did send it, but I must have missed a step or something. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I think you sent it. You sent it actually. You sent it right when we both got on, I think,
right.
or you
And
had just sent it.
right. And um, let's see. Okay. And I probably missed a step because I was hurrying last week. Um, and I don't know why it is that I always seem to use all the time available and then just a little bit more.
Well, the first 95%, it takes the first 95% of the time, and the last 5%, it takes the other 95% of the time.
Oh gosh.
That was the old
Life.
adage for architectural deadlines. And people are like, "Oh my God, I need to stay up all night and to finish for tomorrow." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds like you need about a week."
Yeah. All right. Um, okay. And then I always have to send a test message just because I have to have a test message
Make sure
um,
that
that I have it so that it's in my email. All right, here we go. Send now. All right, here we go. Okay, done. So good morning, Roberta. Good morning, Lowrider. Uh, we are online and we're about to start. I hope everyone has had a good week. I've had a busy week. Um, God knows, I'm a special educator right now in our in a middle school in my hometown of Annapolis, right across from the Naval Academy football stadium. And of course, we're wondering whether there is even going to be special education going forward. I believe that in Maryland it probably will continue, but God knows. So you can hear me all right, Jordan?
I can.
All right. Um, and how's your week been going?
Good. Weather's nice. Got back to work yesterday. We're having winter at night and fall during the day. It's like getting down in the 20s, and then
Oh
during
boy.
the day, it's like the 50s. So
Uh-huh. So
it's pretty,
you can stand to stay out there for that, right?
yeah. At
Yeah.
about 4 o'clock now, though, I'm in the shade, and so
Uh-huh.
there's kind of a put the coat on for about 40 minutes, and then that's enough of that. Um, I did get two Bromic heaters, those big stand-up ones that you see at restaurants.
Right.
So I'm gonna get a couple of small propane tanks. So I may have a completely heated office with no walls soon, and then it won't matter. I can work all the way through the winter instead of taking time off and doing other stuff.
Well, that's cool. For those of you who don't know, Jordan Hoggart is a tarot reader in Taos, New Mexico, and uh, and we are working on Jung's work because uh, tarot is really informed, or Jung is really informed by the tarot and by astrology, and it's a long story, but anyway. We've done a number of series about the tarot over the years. You can find them on this YouTube channel. And and Roberta is in Portugal. Good afternoon. The sun now coming out there. Terrific.
And it's
Here,
interesting. It's interesting. Jung didn't use tarot directly very much, but very much astrology. But he was familiar with tarot.
Right.
But what I find with tarot, especially, and Jung's active imagination, we're dealing with a visual language, and so I think the visual fluency that's what's really aligned with the tarot, and Jungian work, psychology, or just living. And I think
Sure.
that that's something that a lot of people, I laugh when someone says something that's really, really, really too rational. It's like, wow, that made too much sense to be worth a damn. And you kick the
Yep.
heart of the matter right out of it. So I think that especially tarot or oracle decks or staring at a flower or a butterfly, it's
Sure.
that experiential, visual, no words fluency that I think really complements our thought, and I think makes things more robust. So yeah.
Right. And we'll at this point we'll repeat the one sentence that sort of sums up Jungian psychology, because it gets so complicated that we can't uh, even think, what the heck was this guy talking about? Because he got into some really thick weeds, I would say. But um, a Jungian analyst named Lawrence Jaffe, whose mother was the secretary for Jung's memoir, as much of a memoir as we have from him, which is called Memories, Dreams, Reflections. Um, and this year, sometime at some point, I believe that we're going to have a new version of this memoir, which will have about twice as much material in it. Um, and that's called The Protocols. And a lot of things were dumped from the first version because the family was kind of embarrassed, I think, about some of the things that were in it. But now that he's been dead a long time, um, and even his grandchildren are sort of, if they're not dead, they're standing at the edge of the grave. So even his grandchildren are pretty much gone. Um, and so we're able to talk about these things a little more. So here's what Lawrence Jaffe said. Uh, the, the purpose of Jung's whole psychology is to make accessible to us that healing power which resides in our unconscious. And so the point is very precise. When we are talking about Jungian psychology, anything that we say can bring up something uh, that, boy, you never expected it. So, I mean, this morning I found myself getting into the shower singing a song uh, that we used to sing when I was in like the fourth grade, something like that, and it goes something like this: great green gobs of ooey gooey gopher guts, birdie do concentrated monkey see, whatever it is, something like that. um, and what a silly song. And that came, unbidden my unconscious this morning. Uh, and I have no idea why as yet. Maybe I will have a revelation sometime during the day. But the point is that if you make accessible your unconscious, which is really unconscious, as Jung put it, he said it's really unconscious, but we get messages, and we get them in images, and images of a song. That's sort of a whole song that came to my mind. Um, and whatever it is that triggers those images helps you think about something that you may need to think about. And it's the unconscious heals us uh, well. So when you go into prayer in any any of the Abrahamic religions or any other religion, for example, you're very simply calling upon the unconscious to heal something or to help you with something. And all the religions do this. They make accessible the unconscious in different ways. And um, and then your unconscious has a healing power, so that when something awful happens to you, yeah, it'll be awful today. It's awful. But tomorrow it's going to tomorrow it's going to be better. And the reason it gets better is because your unconscious heals you. And so, okay, Jordan, you go ahead and embellish on that. I have to go get myself a glass of water. I'll be right
Okay.
back.
Yes. To me, the thing about prayer that's so important is the silence, because the unconscious, just like the intuition, is typically nonverbal. It's usually experiential, visual, feeling. And so instead of thinking and sensation, which are quantifiable, um, you if you practice with your intuition and your feeling, you can quantify them. But what I find is then the silence and prayer gets rid of all the mental chatter, and you feel and see and know things that come from the intuition and the feeling functions. And what I find is it's kind of like volcanic activity. Sometimes it's just some tectonic plate movement underneath, deep down, and you know something's there, or some magma that's flowing up towards erupting as lava, as an intuition. But I think the prayer piece is an important example of how um, how to utilize this healing power of the unconscious, because it's experiential. And for example, my intuition will work where, the reasons are unreasonable. I have a friend where facts just come to her. So it depends on how your mind works, as to how you utilize it. And, neither of us is more or less intuitive than the other, but the way it comes across is different. So basically, I think, Skip, as you walked off, I think prayer is the most important. I think as you walked off, prayer is the most important piece because of the silence. Because I think the healing power of the unconscious comes through the intuitive function and the feeling function, whereas thinking and sensation are quantifiable. So you get rational things with thinking and with sensation because they're factually there. But I think then intuition and feeling, reasons are unreasonable. So it's like volcanic activity. Is it tectonic plates underneath, deep down? Is it magma stirring up to erupt in lava? And as I mentioned right at the end there, I mean, my intuition is usually kind of abstract, and I'll see it coming as either a metaphor or funny. Yesterday, someone said you can't hold a candle to that, and those figures of speech, those old, figures of speech to me are always interesting. I'm like, well, do you know where "can't hold a candle to that" came from? And I said, well, no. I said, well, this will help your intuition. You're saying you can't hold a candle to that. What happened is masters used to have the apprentice hold a candle for them to work in dimly lit conditions. And if you couldn't even hold the candle right, you were not allowed to progress as an apprentice. So that you can't even hold a candle to that, it basically says you're an idiot. And you're not even qualified to be the master's apprentice, kind of thing. So my intuition, figures of speech and metaphor typically, or some like itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. And I'm like, well, what point in kindergarten or preschool am I thinking about? And how can I access there? Whereas some people's come up matter of factly, and they just have facts. And what's interesting to me, and I think are you more dominant in the thinking function and the sensation function, the feeling function, or the intuitive function? And I think whichever one is most developed or most natural is usually the way your intuition comes in. So to me, it's never ever relative. don't let anyone teach you intuition. Teach which function happens and then utilize their examples, but work with your own way.
Right. And let's see. I did want to mention that I am making a gift to some of my students in my advanced class, and I'm happy to do that with some of the students here. If you want to write to me an email asking for this gift, I will need your home address, your snail mail address, so that I can do this. I'm going to show you the painting that I did after a year of doing studies. I came up with one painting that a lot of people seem to like, and let's see. Okay, and it sort of is on this topic. Okay, so I'm going to share it with you. If you would like a copy of, a signed and numbered print of this painting, you can write to me at skip.conover@gmail.com. I will put my email address in here. And anyway, Jordan's going to get a copy because it's my Christmas gift to my close friends. And so if you would like that painting, I think, all right. And so this painting is entitled Tracks to Nowhere Through Magnificence. And the tracks represent everything that humanity has ever done. Everything we've ever mansplained or womansplained about in all the history of humanity. And what I'm referring to is the fact that the universe itself is just hugely magnificent. And it's a reference to this image that was taken from the Voyager spacecraft about 30 years ago, and Carl Sagan used to refer to the pale blue dot. Everything that ever happened in humanity happened on that pale blue dot, everything. And so everything that we've ever done or any species has ever done has been confined to that little dot hanging out there in space. And it's well for us to remind ourselves of that. And so, it's remember the old saying, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. It's like that.
Well, and to protect that blue dot too, double check stuff before you go off the handle kind of thing. Because, for example, in 1960, NORAD confirmed with 99.9% certainty that the Soviet Union had launched a full-scale missile attack.
Yes.
Someone looks out the window, thinks about things in a bigger three-dimensional piece or three-dimensional way, and says, no, it picked up the moon, full moon rising over Siberia as a bright missile attack. It's just the moon. So be careful. I mean, the whole, that's why there's so many checks and balances and keys and numbers to go in before anything, goes out the ground, out across to somewhere else to blow up. I mean, but the fact that, seconds away from being vaporized because the full moon was rising and it was glowing, and the computer picked it up as and interpreted it as some, incendiary rocket. So, be careful.
Be careful what you think.
Don't believe everything you think. I think that's where it comes. Don't believe everything you think. Just because something tells you and it's so certain, it's okay to say, I don't believe you. Just for no reason whatsoever.
Right. And Anyway, we'll go on. So we're today and every week these days, we're working on Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions, edited by Mary Stein and Thomas Arst. And we're in an essay entitled Encounters with the Animal Soul. And I hope you'll enjoy this program, which Jordan and I will be working through. I'm on page 243 if you have a copy, and there are 5 volumes of this set. Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions. At the end of Liber Primus, Jung has an important vision of the opposites he has been struggling with and shows how the conflict is resolved. This is a beautiful example of a very real experience that he later describes as the work of the transcendent function. Quote, "A wreath of fire shines around the stone. I am seized with fear at what I see, the coarse peasant's boot, the foot of a giant that crushes an entire city. I see the cross, the removal of the cross, the mourning. How agonizing this sight is. No longer do I yearn. I see the divine child with the white serpent in his right hand and the black serpent in his left hand. I see the green mountain, the cross of Christ on it, and a stream of blood flowing from the summit of the mountain. I can look no longer. It is unbearable. I see the cross and Christ on it in his last hour and torment. At the foot of the cross, the black serpent coils itself. It has wound itself around my feet. I am held fast and I spread my arms wide. Salome draws near. The serpent has wound itself around my whole body, and my countenance is that of a lion." Unquote. Jung has been forced to endure the torment and crucifixion of Christ as Christ. The giant's undifferentiated energy of the primordial depths destroys the city, or we could say, Jung's conscious collective viewpoint. The cross represents hanging between the opposites of forethought and love, logos and eros. Pulled apart in opposite directions, Jung suffers mightily while out of this horrendous depression, and struggle emerges the new life. The divine child, holding the black and white snakes in the correct hands now, representing the resolution of the conflict that Jung himself, the conflict that is Jung himself. Finally, the snake coils itself around him in the deification initiation to hold him in a protected temenos. Temenos is a sacred place. In a protected temenos, a sacred precinct, where he is held together and does not fall into pieces and is able to meet the unconscious. Here, Jung is the vessel in which the opposites reconcile and the new God will be born. And this new symbol of divinity okay, I marked this up so I didn't read the emphasis correct. A new God will be born, his new symbol of divinity. His face is that of a lion, with snake and lion as opposites depicted in the pre-Christian god Mithras. In this mystery, Jung becomes the 2 principles, love and forethinking, and 2 energies, serpent and lion. Through his self-sacrifice as Christ, he transformed eros from pleasure into love and life. Okay. Then another quote, "Mark that it is my bad pleasure that which leads me to self-sacrifice. Its innermost is love, which will which will be freed from pleasure through sacrifice. Here the wonder happened that my previously blind pleasure, represented by Salome, became sighted. My pleasure was blind, and it was love. Since my strongest willed self-sacrifice, my pleasure changed. It went into a higher principle, which in God is one with forethinking. Love wants what is furthest, the best and the fulfilling. And I saw something further, namely that the forethinking in me had the form of an old prophet, pre-Christian, Elijah, and transformed itself into a form that no longer appeared in a human form, but in an absolute form of a pure white light. This just happened to me. I just saw it. Unquote. Jung had a transcendent experience, which he later came to understand to be a result of the transcendent function, the new bridging symbol between opposites. He experienced himself as the vessel for this transformation. This is a very important discovery, which he later discusses in answer to Job, pointing to locating the God within as humans' role in the incarnation and transformation of the God image. With his soul anima in human form and able to see, she was moved from the unconscious into the human realm of consciousness, acting as a guide to the many other encounters with parts of himself he has to experience. She becomes once again the chthonic snake who knows her way through the unconscious. Then, when he becomes overly humble and mocked, the soul comes in and in the form of a white bird to bring compensation from above for his lowly attitude. From white bird to snake, the up and down is the energetic movement of inflation and depression that is a continuous cycle in the journey to self. He, quote, he who does not want evil will have no chance to save his soul from hell. So long as he remains in the light of the upper world, he will become a shadow of himself, but his soul will languish in the dungeons of the demons. Jung's task is to accept the reality of these different energies within himself that manifest as real figures.
I think it's important to say there, especially right at the end, he's pretty much saying the unconscious is soul, and that you don't want to just languish up here in the light. And from that perspective, going back to the beginning of this passage, the divine child, the white serpent in the right hand, that's conscious, that's spirit, that's formative. And then the black serpent in the left hand is unconscious and soul and generative. So, I mean, I could attribute masculine to formative and feminine to generative, but I kind of find that leads us astray pretty quickly. But because we all each have some just more dominant than others. But I think that if we just stick to the general of the generative, dark, soulful, unconscious, and the formative, real, conscious spirit, then what's interesting is I can take the four psychological functions, and this may be a bunch of hocus pocus, but I always wonder if the transcendent function is simply the operative unity of all four of the psychological functions working together, where intuition is dark, prima materia, soulful, intuitive, and then feeling is the golden bright version of intuition that's come into being, and then thinking deep within, a different kind of soulful darkness, rational, and then sensation being the manifested thinking of the feeling and the intuition. So I kind of feel like feeling may be the golden version of intuition, and sensation may be the golden version of thinking. And the transcendent function, I always find I'm no less aware. There's still an I don't get dissolved. There's no dissolution. But what's interesting is I always feel like I'm intuitively feeling, thinking, sensating at the same time. So I think I kind of wonder the transcendent function, instead of a separate fifth, the fifth is the sum of the four psychological functions, I find. And now that could be taken serious issue with, because it's just anecdotal that I feel like I'm experiencing all four psychological functions and any kind of transcendence. But the cool thing is I can also desubstantiate myself, because afterwards I don't have a whole lot of recollection of what the heck just happened. So I can't forensically go back and say, well, this and that, and if then, and if P then Q, and the logic disappeared. So this passage right here, I think is something that, if you look at that quote of the accessing the healing power of the unconscious, these four paragraphs are pretty poignantly directly related just to the exercise of looking at what's going on with the healing power of the unconscious. And then even the cross, up, down, side to side, there's the uniting. So the cross is another yin yang, the dark and the light, the dark and the light kind of thing.
Well, I think the whole point is summed up by the statue of the baby that's holding the two snakes, the dark and the light. And the point is that that baby is us. Okay, we are always between a rock and a hard place. Okay, we're always in the middle of every duality. And my wife Debbie, who's a outstanding Buddhist practitioner, had occasion to write a short piece to a pastor who is a dear friend of ours, and she wrote it this morning and shared it with me, so I'll share it with you, because a lot of people are trying to figure out what happened in the election, what happened, and so here's what she said. I feel like all the pundits on both sides miss the deeper problem, which is the largely unexamined human habit of othering, quote unquote. We all do it all the time. There are many flavors of it, and political parties and systems, countries, states, communities, religions, races, ethnic groups, tribes, families, etc., cluster around different and constantly changing clusters of comfortable othering. Our individual identities are based on othering. Until a critical mass of humans look within to get at the root cause, it will just roll in as a constant game of retributive and crazy-making whack-a-mole. And yes, I see that even writing this and subtly, pridefully, identifying myself as one of those working on eliminating my othering, as opposed to those who aren't, is nothing more than othering. It's deeply psychologically hardwired. It may be what gets the human race in the end, but I choose to keep working to reduce my habit of it until the jig is up. And that's by my wife, Deborah McLaughlin. And it really kind of sums the whole crazy business up, the crazy making business that we're all involved in.
Well, if we look at that, I like I won't say dispassionate and I won't say removed. It's a very active perspective she's looking at. And regardless of picking a side, both sides telling various truths, but then when you get them all stirred up, foaming at the mouth, all you know is that they're blaming someone else for what they were doing. So it's a confession. So when someone gets all stirred up, especially politically, it's just it's a conscious triggering. They're trying to get you to foam at the mouth. They're trying to give you spoon feed a trigger. That's step one in Joseph Goebbels' playbook. Make the lie big, blame the other side for it. And then what happens is you say it enough, that othering is imparted. And I think when the othering is imparted, that's when you get indoctrination, and that's when you get the conflict. Whereas if I take the disappearing path with othering, I always am that grown child with both snakes in the hand. Because on the disappearing path, I have to believe in reality and in magic, and neither at all. I'm just living. And so I think living would be an example of the transcendent function relative to the disappearing path, because I think that othering is so important. I mean, what are revolutions and civil wars done? Giant othering, where, you know, the momentous scale of one side versus the other. But if I dial it down to two people, David versus Goliath, well, I'm sure a lot of people supported Goliath. You know, and because there were two sides. But the othering of the small,
the Philistines.
the othering of the small defeating the large. I think the lesson with that othering, as she so aptly said, I'd like you to read it again too. But the white serpent in the right hand and the black serpent in the left hand. Our job is don't lose that. You know, 2 words, keep that. You know, it's a childlike connection. Would you read what her piece again?
Yes, I will. Okay, so this is my wife, Deborah McLaughlin, and she is writing to a pastor friend of ours. I don't disagree with any of it. However, and she's responding to an article that our pastor friend had sent to her. And so she's responding to that. She says, I don't disagree with any of it. However, I feel like all the pundits on both sides miss the deeper problem, which is the largely unexamined human habit of othering. We all do it all the time. There are many flavors of it, and political parties and systems, countries, states, communities, religions, races, ethnic groups, tribes, families, etc., cluster around different and constantly changing clusters of comfortable othering. Our individual identities are based on othering. Until a critical mass of humans look within to get at the root cause, it will just roll in as a constant game of retribution and crazy-making whack-a-mole. And yes, I see that even writing this, and subtly, pridefully in parentheses, identifying myself as one of those working on eliminating my othering, as opposed to those who aren't, is nothing more than othering. It's deeply psychologically hardwired. It may be that what gets the human race in the end, but I choose to keep working to reduce my habit of it until the jig is up. And so that's the point. We all have this habit. And, Jung's transcendent moment when he was having these dreams and visions, the vision that I read at the beginning of this session is one of 12 major dreams and visions that Jung had that were precursors to World War I. He didn't know what was happening to him, but he knew something was up. And at some point he thought, he may be having a psychological break himself. And this went on for nearly a year, from October 12th, 1913 to August 1st, 1914. But when the guns of August finally rolled and World War I actually began, Jung said, I was the happiest man alive because I then knew that I was um, experiencing something out of the collective unconscious and not only my own psyche. And of course, his father was a Swiss Reformed pastor. So his father was, put all the Christian symbolism into his head. And so as he's going through these visions, he's he's having these visions in the context of Christianity. But it doesn't have to be Christianity. And, he was struggling with it, just as I have on a number of occasions gotten fussed sufficiently so that I had transcendent experiences that I recognize as such. Okay, and most people can't show a picture of theirs, but I can show a picture of mine. So, and lots of people here have seen this, but it's in this context, which is I was really upset one day about something that was happening to me in my physical life. And I was in the chapel at the U.S. Naval Academy, and I was in an attitude of prayer. It was dark in the chapel. I was the only person there, and there were no lights on inside the chapel, only ambient light from the windows and the stained glass windows. And so this is what happened to me. And when this happened to me, and this is this window, the top of it, these three panes here, more than one pane, but this is a Tiffany stained glass window. And then there's a balcony here, and the windows below it are not Tiffany. They're stained glass, but they're not Tiffany. And so you can really see the difference even in this photograph. But the point is, the sun came, and it came only on me. And I said, oh my God, nobody's going to believe this if I tell about it unless I take a picture. And so that's why I took the picture of it. And then I turned the camera back on myself and took this photograph of myself. And you can see that the light was only on me, and it was only from, my forehead down on me, but I didn't know that at the time. And the windows behind these are also stained glass windows, so you can see how dark it was that day. But all this light was on me, and I recognized right away that there was something transcendent about it. And it is one of the examples of this healing power that we were talking about at the beginning of this session, which is the purpose of Jung's whole psychology is to make accessible to us that healing power which resides in the unconscious. And so that moment, that transcendent moment, made the unconscious accessible to me. And it transcended the moment, and I transcended the moment. And I got out of my funk as a result of it and was able to move on with my life. Jordan, you wanted to say something?
I think the picture there, both of them are wonderful examples, anecdotal examples of how each of us is the light within the dark, but more importantly, the dark within the light. So I don't think it's about being all lovey-dovey, light and airy. I think it's about substance and depth, as well as those numinous lit spiritual pieces But at the same time, because I think the light nests in the dark and it's supported by the dark. So again, sticking with theme of not othering, that when you're that light in the dark, you're the whole yin yang. You're the light in the dark and the light. And the disappearing path is a little serpentine S right in between. And it doesn't really exist other than like in nature. No, nature knows no line. You just see the end of one thing entering and engaging the air or another thing, whereas there's not really a line. There's just, you've passed a property line of identity, one to the other, but each one is all together in all. So I think your picture.
And the point is that we are the yin yang, both sides of it.
Not one
all the time.
Yeah, the whole thing, exactly. And I think that disappearing path is, my left foot in the dark and my right foot in the light. And I'm, kid jumping in a mud puddle, walking the dark and the light, not good and evil. It's like, stop, look at this. Because what happens is there's mud, and the mud is the combination of, the water and the earth, the above and the below. So if I look at even the ocean, I mean, if I say masculine ocean, people look at me like I have two heads. But if then I say Neptune, they don't see the connection. If I say Neptune, masculine ocean, it's not the water. It's the whole giant continental sized vessel of the sand underneath, like the ocean is in a cup. So, but the cup is round and spherical and not containing. It's, how can a cup contain when it's a sphere and the water's on top? So in a sense, it reverses the nature of, this kind of cup versus the earth itself as a vessel, where the contained is on the outside instead of on the inside. So
so the summation point, though, is again the statue of the baby with the two snakes in their hand. That's us, all of us, and we all have both snakes in our hands, and we need to understand that. and so what comes from the unconscious here is the fact that we are the yin yang, all of it, not just one side or the other. And we are the good and the bad. We're doing it. Okay. So anyway, we're going to move on. I will read the next paragraph, and then I'll let Jordan opine. It's a very thick paragraph that has lots of underlines and stars next to it, so I'm sure there'll be lots to say. Soul gives Jung three things: the misery of war, the darkness of magic, and the gift of religion. Soul as snake and Jung quarrel as they walk a tenuous middle road between opposites, accepting and not accepting each other's viewpoints. It becomes clear to Jung that the human stands in between the snake and the bird. If you want to become and not only be, then a battle between bird and serpent breaks out. Recognizing that she, the snake soul, has wisdom, Jung asks her many questions, trying to elicit understanding for himself. What he learns, which is of great importance, is that when the opposites come together, everything stops, becoming motionless, and rests at a standstill. The counterforce of Satan, or darkness, is required to keep the libido or creative energy moving. This points to the continuous process of becoming. It is ongoing and never ending. Let's see. The place of stillness is where one experiences the reality of the self, a state of transcendence and unification. These moments are fleeting before we fall back into our humanity once again, where the opposites push each other apart. Individuation strives to keep to bring more of what is unconscious into our conscious awareness. Through drawing the darkness from my beyond over into the day, I emptied my beyond. Therefore, the demands of the dead disappeared as they were satisfied. I am no longer threatened by the dead, since I accepted their demands through accepting the serpent. The dead represents the complexes and unlived life left behind by past generations that become ours to carry and make conscious. It became Jung's task now to live his life rather than to succumb to the pressures from the past of the collective. Too much.
Well, simple, I think, rather than opining, just four things popped out to me. One, the misery of war. The point is to see the light in the dark. The gift of religion is to see the mystery in the light. And the darkness of magic is the disappearing path of no othering. And then dark is matter and substance, and the darkness measures the travel of the light. So I think that way the whole of this is four pointed as to showing depth of experience. And it became Jung's task now to live his life rather than succumb to the pressures from the past or the collective. You know, tradition is just peer pressure from dead people, and they don't get a vote. Right. And the thing is, you can cross-check me pretty hard on that, because the thing is, influence is pretty sneaky stuff. So I can, laugh and say tradition is peer pressure from dead people, but me saying I have no influences, that would be folly. There,
yeah.
Especially if I have conviction about them. So, because even self-influence, how has a position I've taken measured out the next result I have? I mean, so even my self-influence in the past, don't believe everything I think, is something that, I try to look at, for example, at my table when I'm listening. It's not just the words, it's when they say something and I get tingles. That's their piece. That's the gold they handed over. Right. And when I'm speaking also, if I get tingles, I stop. Because right there, no matter what I've said, it doesn't matter if there's a conclusion or an introduction, there's gold in the tingles. So I think going back to the beginning of today's session with prayer, the silence is so important, to listen to the visceral, the experiential, to see the visual, but not being all, words and talk.
Okay, so Richard makes an interesting point here. Is Jung talking about orgasm? And certainly for adults who have experienced that transcendence with a loved one, it can be that, okay, but it can be lots of other things also. And so I don't think we should demean it by talking about sexuality. Obviously, Dr. Ruth and lots of other people have written ad infinitum about it, and
Ruth, just like a cucumber.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to go on now. I'm going to go on now.
Well, actually, to respond directly, I think, to Richard's question, the counterforce of Satan or darkness is required to keep now listen close, to keep the libido or creative energy moving. That means the creative drive and the sex drive are both substantial, depthful forces, but they're different. So I think, yes, he could indicate that. That would be in the libido, the sex drive. But then there's also the creative drive. And I find that they're distinct. And so I think you could attribute that as being implied to be included here in the libido portion, but libido or creative, I think there's two: sex drive and creative drive. And I think it's important not to sensationalize when we hear one to forget the other. Because again,
I think it's important not to differentiate.
Well, and the thing is too, exactly.
Because all of these things come down to the same thing, okay, which is opening the healing power of the unconscious. And when of course when there's good sex, you open the healing power. When sex becomes too one-sided, you don't. And so I just want to be very careful there. All right, so let's
talk about connection, because in connection, it's not othering, it's connection. So that, like you said, one-sided would be othering, and then connection is not othering. So I think that it's really apt to not try to differentiate, because I think then all the reasons you come up with are all unreasonable, simply because they're rational, but they're not connection.
Yeah, I mean, Americans largely a lot of us are descended from people with very puritanical views, okay? We're descended from the Puritans, and if you think you're not, and you've been in the United States for more than 3 or 4 generations, you surely are.
Because you've been part of them or affected by them, and
affected by them, exactly.
In the 80s, it was that the Prime Minister of France said, "Oh, America, yes, that country of sexual prudes."
Right. And so the point is that every so often somebody goes out on a jag about this or that, and we see it all. We saw it in this election, obviously. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but the point is that all of us are the center point. All of us have the transcendent function within ourselves, and so that's what Jung is getting at here. He's getting at the fact that we have to see both sides of the equation. Anyway, let me read on here. Once again, true to the cycle, the snake, after giving Jung hardness, wisdom, and magical power from below, is pulled upward into the form of a white bird, the spiritual soul, to find something important in heaven for Jung, something he needs, a discarded golden crown with the incised words, "Love never ends." The movement from below to above is balanced by the need again for Jung to hang on the tree of life for 3 days and 3 nights until he understands, hanging between heaven and hell, much like his hanging on the cross in Liber Primus. This time he hangs between the opposites of life and love. Love wants to hold on like the mother who who these disciplinary divisions, as they continue to haunt the success of the work of the 21st century. Oh, I beg your pardon. I just realized this. Okay, there is a printer's error in my version of this book, and so we have to discontinue actually this discussion. I mean, we can take it as far as it goes in this paragraph, but I'll show you the problem. When they printed this is page 246, and this is page 253. And so there's this huge printer's error right in the middle of the book. And I do have Chiron. I'm sure this has been corrected in later printings, but as soon as I saw that there was a huge mistake here, I wrote to Chiron Publications and told them about it, and they sent me the full essay, which I don't have quick access to at the moment, so I'll just leave it at that. But so let's
I was refilling. Show me that again. I was refilling my cup.
Okay, so I have page 246 here, page 253 here.
Oh,
okay. So I bought this book when it was brand new, and it was a printer's error of leaving that folio of the book, 8 pages of the book, out. and so you know,
I have those 6 pages right here. Mine are.
They're in your book?
Yeah, it goes 247, 248, end notes.
Okay, if you want to read on, fine, but let's just discuss the beginning of this paragraph for a minute.
So where'd you start or where'd you stop? I was refilling.
Well, once again,
okay.
True to the cycle, the snake, after giving Jung hardness, wisdom, and magical power from below, is pulled upward into the form of a white bird, the spiritual soul, to find something important in heaven for Jung, something he needs. A discarded golden crown with the incisive words, "Love never ends." The movement from below to above is balanced by the need again for Jung to hang on the tree of life for 3 days and 3 nights until he understands hanging between heaven and hell, much like his hanging on the cross in Liber Primus. This time he hangs between the opposites of life and love. Love wants to hold on like the mother, and then it stops. So what's the rest of the paragraph?
Love wants to hold on like the mother who cares for the child, while life wants more. The beginnings, in quotes, the beginnings of all things is love, but the being of things is life. Meanwhile, Philemon impregnates Jung's soul, and she in turn gives birth to a monster, the son of frogs, the Antichrist. Jung is furious seeing this despised, ugly creature and can hardly believe that his soul gave birth to this monster. Finally, as he calms down, he realizes his task is to love all that is ugly, foolish, and weak, contemptuous and hated within himself. The crown he wears unites what is separated. Abraxas, his new god, is lord of the physical world, a Gnostic god that represents the union of Christ and Satan. He is the antithesis of the golden bird, the shining god, Phanes, born out of Isdabar's egg, the bliss beyond suffering and joy. Lamed and humiliated as Jung is now by the deeply felt realization that this too is his creation, the divine born from his soul, he reluctantly approaches his rejected God. Yet his God cannot stay. He grows wings and ascends, leaving Jung alone with himself as animal, human, and capital D, divinity. And then they have the conclusion section. So in conclusion, Jung discovered an antidote to loss of soul. Not an easy remedy, but one that results in the transformation of the personality, the coming home to the soul of one's being. Here, one experiences solid ground rather than the illusionary quicksand that is the terra on which our fragmented and fearful postmodern culture rests. He experienced his own multiplicity within and shaped it into a unity, which he called the self. This process of healing is individual, yet affects the greater collective whole as well. With each person's increased consciousness, the larger culture changes, reflecting the alchemical dictum that, in quotes, the microcosm is identical with the macrocosm. In Jung's early vision, as cited at the beginning of this paper, out of the frozen land, he is given the gift of a leaf-bearing tree, but without fruit. In parentheses, my tree of life, I thought, whose leaves had been transformed by the effects of the frost into sweet grapes full of healing juices. I plucked the grapes and gave them to a large, waiting crowd. His life task, his myth, was presented to him through this vision. It pointed not only him personally, but also to his relationship to the collective. Grapes signify both fertility and sacrifice and are related to the Greek god Dionysus, who facilitates the remembering of one's inner nature, one's soul. Dionysus was a dismembered, sacrificed god. To unleash the inner creative forces of our life, sacrifice is always required of us. From the frozen land where nothing grows and all is stagnant, the tree of life emerges in his early dream and later vision where he is transformed. Out of depression emerges new life. Jung's vision was a foreshadowing of what was to become of Europe, but it also pointed to his own need to break through the frozen, soulless aspects of himself and descend into the center of his being, to understand and assimilate his own shadow contents in the unconscious. While he was a pioneer in exploring his inner, in quotes, cosmos, his example is a gift of sweet grapes for the larger, in quotes, cosmos. Through his journey inward, Jung realized that his process mirrored the template for what he later called individuation, or the natural course of human development. He reminds us, if you look into yourselves, you will see the world of the inner is as infinite as the world of the outer. He challenges each one of us to embark on our own unique journey to find ourselves. My dream of the Buddhist mandala, located in the real world, and the wish for the unification of the essence of all religions into our hearts and souls reflect the continuing need for each one of us to take up the arduous but vital task of bringing to birth the new symbols that may unify us rather than destroy us, along with our earth and its other inhabitants, the animals and plants. We are running out of time as our world increasingly suffers from climate changes, overpopulation, and the unleashing of a torrent of intolerance, fear, and aggression, a reflection of our increasing inner chaos. Jung's Red Book was written years ago, yet published at the dawn of postmodern chaos. This was no accident. He left his map of the unconscious for us to use to navigate the inner world of the psyche, which is where the outer world is fundamentally conceived. this vital fact is forgotten in our one-sided logos and science-based culture, as well as in its opposite, feeling, sensation-based fundamentalism. No doubt the snakes and birds will lead the stream of demons across our paths until we remember, put our technological devices aside, and descend into our own heaven and hell to find our new myth of wholeness in between. And in between is hyphenated. So it's the both and, or no otherness, the disappearing path. Oh, and you're muted.
Yeah. So that's it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the end notes, and that's yeah, two pages of end notes, and then it goes into
yeah. So I'm not being paid for this, but I do want to tell the audience about a product that I discovered about 2 weeks ago. I often eat Cliff Bars for lunch at school because unlike years ago when everybody had an hour for lunch, we only get 20 minutes or so, and it's not really time to sit down and have a meal, and I never have it in the cafeteria anyway, so I usually eat a Cliff Bar or something like that. But I discovered on Amazon a new thing that Cliff has. It's not it's not available in my grocery store, but it's available on Amazon, and it's called Cliff Energy Chews. And I have found these extremely accommodating because they do contain caffeine. They contain caffeine from green tea, which is called matcha. And so one of these chew blocks, it's actually 6 little cubes come in this, that equals half a cup of coffee. And I don't have access to brewed coffee during the day in my work, so I've found these very accommodating. And so you might want to check them out if you need something to pick you up during the day. That's an unpaid announcement by a genuine, I guess, influencer. I must be an influencer. I'm talking about that. Anyway, go ahead, Jordan.
no, you're an influencer now.
Yeah, I'm an influencer because I'm sure you've had days where nothing's happening for an hour or so, and your head goes, oh.
Yeah.
You can't. You sort of get lost in your thoughts and fall asleep.
It's funny, this week it felt like hardly anything was happening, and then I opened up Instagram and I saw tradition is peer pressure from dead people, and then look at the both and. You live in the confluence of soul and spirit, and I'm looking, going, who's listening to our show that steals these things we say, or is it just, hey, it's in the collective unconscious, and we're all saying similar things around the same time? So, theft or synchronicity doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's kind of cool though that, oh, nice. If I said that, then I'm glad that someone found it valuable. Or, yeah. Oh, if they're not even listening to what we're saying, then, oh, look, someone's thinking the same thing. How cool is that? And it reminds me of someone talking about a pirated deck, and someone stealing a chapter out of my book. And I said, oh, how cool. And they went, what? Well, aren't you angry? I'm like, look, that's not my primary, mode of making a living. And honestly, if someone liked my work so much that they broke the law to get it, wow, that's an honor.
Yeah.
It's like, gonna say,
Yeah,
not like they're gonna make anything off of it. So but I think it's interesting again, the no reacting, just the responding. So
yeah. And speaking of that, I have tucked into uh, this book a newspaper article that was written about me some years ago. Let's see if I can see the date. No, I don't know the date, but it's when I was much younger, and so I was uh, I was publishing some of my early paintings in the bathroom of a local coffee house. And this is not the painting that was stolen, but wait a minute, I guess I have to turn my background off for a moment. Okay, so I had a painting stolen, and
yeah, any press is good press.
right. So theft brings artist notoriety. At this point, the stolen painting is making me famous, so whoever has it can have it with my blessing, but only for that one.
Nice.
Right, because there was actually an article in the local paper about the theft of my painting. Uh, and I don't paint that way anymore, but
That's funny there because I remember um, a woman, quote unquote, borrowing one of my paintings. She needed something on her wall. Well, about a year later, I'm like, "Have you gotten anything else? Do you want to buy the painting? What do you, you know?" It's been there for a year. No response. No response. So okay, she totally ghosts me. Well, and the funny thing is, she lived down the street, but I didn't know which house because just knew each other from walking up and down the sidewalk. So I didn't
right.
know where it was. I didn't know where it was. Well, scroll forward 5 years, and I'm at one of my other neighbors' houses, and I'm like, "Oh, that's a really cool painting." They said, "Yeah, we got it for $500 from the artist across the street." I went, "Hmm." Tell her, I hope you enjoy it. So
Mhm.
yeah, but I didn't say anything to him. But I was like, "Oh, I know where my painting lives now." So she not only stole it, she sold it as her own.
Oh
And
my
and
goodness.
and I said, they said it's really weird because she doesn't sign her paintings. I said that means she's never looked at the back of the painting. So I'm not going to say anything because I always signed my paintings on the back because I thought the signature got in the way of the composition. It was like graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
And um, later they came over. They said, "Oh, we took it off the wall. It turned. That's your signature." Mm-hmm. Should we
Yeah,
pay? I'm like, I can't have you pay me. You already paid for the painting. Now you paid a liar for the painting, but it was stolen from me. So that's just what it is. So
yeah.
don't say anything to her, but now watch what she says when she talks about it.
Hmm.
And it was so funny because she had made up this whole thing around the painting, and I got a kick out of it because um, instead of calling her on it, there was the oh, um, let's just watch how liars function. What's she going to say, and then what she's going to forget that she said, and she'll say something. So yeah, I love it because so I love your notoriety there in the article for a stolen painting.
Right. And I have a similar story. I have a beautiful painting which now hangs over my bed, but um, I have this friend who's an artist in Japan. His name's Daniel Kelly, and he's been there since I was living there in the early 80s. And before that, about I would say he went to Japan about 79 or so, and he's still there. And he we became friends because I bought a lot of his art over the years, his and one other artist, Sarah Brer. And so he had a show in New York. He was having a show in Tokyo, and he hadn't sold it. So he asked me if I could just keep it for him for a few months until his next show. And he said, yeah, you can hang it on the wall, no problem. So I hung it on the wall of my office, and I really grew to love this painting. And so 9 months later, he calls me up and he says, well, I need my painting for my show. I go, oh no, I can't, I don't want to give it to you because I want it. And
But
he said, well, I have to have it for the show. But if it doesn't sell again, you can buy it. So it didn't sell again, and I bought it.
nice.
He does amazing work. So anyway,
Well, and it's funny that the way things like that go, if nothing's selling, and then all of a sudden there's a red dot on one painting.
yeah,
Boom, they all disappear. I remember a friend of mine going, watch this. And he walked over to his girlfriend, handed her the cash. She went and bought one of his paintings. There goes the red dot, and the whole rest of the show just boom, sold. So, it's like someone who throws a 20 in their tip basket. Then people don't want to put ones in because they feel bad. So they start throwing fives and tens. So all those kind of misdirections, the kabuki theater in life, is just, it's interesting. Yep, you froze, or maybe I did.
the painting I was doing back in the 90s. But I'm trying to develop a following by just giving them to my friends and to my followers for Christmas this year. And so
Nice.
and so ironically, as you know, most of my paintings are Rocky, but that painting is not a Rocky.
Right.
And the painting I've offered for Christmas. And so anyway, some of them are going to go out this week as time permits, because the school being what the school is, we have mostly women teachers as usual, and they need to spend time with their families preparing for Thanksgiving. And so we're having parent-teacher conferences tomorrow, and then that's the last time we have to go in to work until the following Monday. So that'll be a nice week off, pretty much. We have to log on on Tuesday, but we don't have to physically go to the school. So I think we'll
we want to call it for this week before we start the next chapter, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
There, two of the end notes that you don't have there, are kind of interesting. Why don't we close? I'll read these.
Go ahead.
Number one, whereas in ancient agricultural societies, human violence caused about 15% of all deaths. During the 20th century, violence caused only 5% of deaths. And then in the early 21st century, it is responsible for about 1% of global mortality. The second end note, Science and Security Board, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, 2017 Doomsday Clock Statement. The Science and Security Board decided in 2017 to move the clock forward to 2.5 minutes to midnight to represent the board's current appraisal of the Earth's health and safety. Factors that impacted this decision were the threat of nuclear weapons, climate change, future technological innovations in biology, artificial intelligence, and the cyber realm that may also pose global challenges. So, especially there, I'd reiterate the pundits on both sides missed their othering, because threat of nuclear weapons, climate change, future technological innovations in biology. Future, that's an unknown variable. And
Yep.
so that's a, doom and gloom. Why waste the good moments now when, thinking about the screwed up moments coming later? Deal with the screwed up moments coming later when they come later. Don't mess up now. And then the cyber realm, that may also pose global challenges, may also, that's like saying I might trip on a crack on the concrete, so I better only walk on the dirt and break my ankle in a hole. I mean, it's like, so I think what's interesting about this is, even, the othering, they're going along, okay, nuclear weapons, fact, climate change, fact with perspective, who knows what's, the earth is changing. It always is. There's this kind of thing called volcanic activity.
Right.
But future technological innovations, cyber realm, that may also. I'm like, oh my Lord, why are you doom and glooming off fictions? So, I mean, it's interesting. Oh my God, if the future ever arrives, we're doomed. Well,
Yeah, well, here's what I have to say about that right there.
there you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Because the point is, all those scientists are working on one or more of those railroad tracks, but
Yep.
they want to go down those railroad tracks and not notice the deer and the antelope playing on the uh, plateau.
Yeah, and I used to
On the
call it
plane.
the circular branch, which I now can call also the circular branch is the disappearing path. Because every time you go off on one of the off roads of the branches, it's just another smaller and smaller road, capillary, etc. And then I'm like, oh, I better go back to the main trunk and go for, oh, look at this road. But after a while, I realized that it's a round trunk, and that tree of life, instead of being, look at how vertical it is, if I take it like a 12-foot ficus that I, trained in a circle,
Mm-hmm.
the fractals of the small off roads and the fractals of the large on the main trunk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always kind of semi-familiar with the lay of the land, but I never know where I am. So it's interesting there, where I think be careful of fictions, and also be careful of knowing that everything is real. I mean, so
yeah, because we when people tell me that something in the imagination isn't real, I say, yes, it is.
yeah.
It's as real as anything else. And
Well, I had someone ask me to go up on a roof last week to get something because they couldn't get up there. So I get on the ladder, but I got to the top of the ladder. I could not lift my leg off the ladder onto the roof. The back of my legs just lit up like they were plugged in. And all I could remember was the 14er where I had slipped into the scree field on the backside.
mm-hmm.
And after that point, I was just terrified, electrified, heights. Well, tell me that's not real. And now I'm like, well, okay, once a week, do I need to go to the top of the ladder somewhere and try to climb on the roof? And then part of me says, don't do that, because your legs are electrified. It's now even more dangerous because you won't have the proper balance. So the thing is, telling me that that's not real, that's a fear that was ingrained as a memory that's physical. And you could say, well, get over it. Well, how? So it's kind of interesting, because the whole how trauma is stored in the body. I had no idea. I'm crawling up the ladder. What piece do you want me to, I get to the top and just dead in my tracks, stopped. I
Well,
literally,
very, very wise, Jordan, because when I was about your age, I was climbing around on roofs too. And so was a friend of mine, and he fell off his
Mhm.
roof and was paralyzed from the neck down for the
Yep.
rest of his life.
Mm.
And
And
you
all I could
know,
see was myself falling off onto the pointy wood fence.
yeah, sure. You're not getting any younger.
No, no. And the thing is, what I realized, this isn't, I should feel bad. I should feel informed that now my balance is completely screwed up.
Mhm.
I would not be able to react because it's basically 220-volt or whatever the amps would be that will cause that much electricity.
Yeah,
But the backs of I mean, just they were literally electric,
yeah.
and it was no tingling. I mean, it was more like fire, and but it stopped me, and I realized, okay, I am not capable right now of even if I walk on the ground, I might fall. I mean, so last thing I need to do is fall from a height. So yeah,
Yeah, I almost fell this morning because I tripped on a rug.
yeah,
You know, uh, I mean, I half fell, but I caught myself with the table, fortunately. But good Lord.
yep,
Um, in the end, I know that a lot of people die after falls or because of
mm-hmm,
falls, right? Not immediately, maybe, but that particular friend of mine, he probably lived another 15 years, but oh, it
mm-hmm.
wasn't fun. The
Well,
last
yeah, yeah,
15 years.
completely.
Yeah. And so when you get up into the geezer ages, which is where I am, you just have to respect that gravity will always win. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So anyway, thanks everyone for being here. Next week we will start with Russell Lockhart's piece because I don't have the beginning of this other piece. I don't even know who it's by.
I have it.
You have the Dionysus piece?
Yeah, it's the Red Book for Dionysus: Literary and Transdisciplinary Interpretation by Susan Rowland, and it's page 251 to
Yeah. Okay, well,
yeah.
I have it after page 253. So why don't
Okay,
we say
yeah,
that? We'll go to that one, but you're going to have to do the reading until page 253.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, because it goes to page 267, 266.
Yeah. I mean, it appears to be it appears to be an interesting article. I certainly marked up a lot of it.
Yeah.
uh, and before I even realized that, because there's a lot of good quotes, pithy quotes in it. I mean,
Yeah.
um, all right. So it's about Dionysus, everybody's favorite joke trickster.
Well, and it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but the remembering, which is the other side of the shamanic journey of the
Mhm.
dismembering, dismembering. But the Dionysus was dismembered. So the
Yeah.
whole, drunkenness kind of taking you apart, making nonsense or no sense out of things that previously made sense. There's a whole lot of the member, remember, dismember, shamanic stuff that I think if we next week keep in mind the no othering and the
Mhm.
disappearing path, that we're both the light and the dark in the light, both yin yang at one time,
Yeah.
then I think we can go through this and maybe share a deeper perspective with people and see what people on the YouTube chat have to say.
Yeah. So, notwithstanding that it's the Thanksgiving holiday weekend,
Oh,
We
that's right.
will be having a class next Sunday. And I will, you say it's page 251
Yeah.
and it's by Susan Rowland, huh?
Yeah, it starts on 251 by Susan Rowland. The Red Book for Dionysus, a literary and transdisciplinary interpretation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I will put together a notice for that. So I'm sending out the notices um, in advance instead of after the class has begun. Um, I'll try to get that right.
I'll just take a picture of the title.
No, I have the title because I have it on the other pages, but I didn't know who the author was.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So
You got it.
Susan Rowland is kind of a sidekick of Nancy Furlotti, whose essay we just read, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Rowland, Susan
yeah,
Rowland.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So see you next week and have a great holiday weekend for everybody. If you're going to be traveling, travel safely.